Welcome everyone. I'm about to start the recording for the show. Sorry about the delay, just getting everything in line and ready to go. So we'll get that started here in just a second. Okay. Okay, let me start the recording and we'll be ready to go. On today's Tech Help for Churches, free podcast media hosts and their limitations. Welcome everyone to another episode of Tech Help for Churches. I'm your host, Paul Allen Clifford. Hey, drop me a line on email, paul@trinitydigitalmedia.com, or give me a call on the voicemail line, 1-877-763-3246. Add echo to echo back to this podcast. You can also head over to churchtechcast.com. This show records live every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific at that time. And I've got the chat window open, ready for interaction. So you can join me and do that there, ask me questions, make comments, etc. You can also go over to Twitter. I'm at Paul Allen Cliff. That's PAUL. ALANCLIF. So let's get started, shall we? I don't have a lot of money as I'm starting this network. Let me just be straightforward and say that. And so I'm not going to appeal for donations here, although they're accepted. No, what I'm going to talk about is some of the ways that I'm saving a little money, and one of those is with some free podcast hosting. Now, generally speaking, there's a reason why there's paid and there's a reason why there's free. So let's talk about that. For Technobabble, for years and years, I've used Libsyn, and I've been very pleased with them. I haven't had any problems. They don't do some of the things that some of the free ones do, so that is something I want you to keep in mind. Libsyn and Blubrry, which are probably the top two podcast media hosts, from what I hear, Libsyn is the top podcast media host in terms of numbers. They've been around since the very beginning of podcasting, so they know a lot about it. They're fairly inexpensive. Their beginning plan starts at $5 a month. I think the Blubrry plan is $10 or $12 a month. The Blubrry plan includes more storage. And both of them include free bandwidth or unlimited bandwidth. So it doesn't matter if your show gets popular, as long as you release the same size file year in and year out, you're golden. And experience has proven out that this is true. So I'd recommend those if you have the money. If you don't have the money, though, like I don't have the money, then you've got another problem. And that problem is, how do you host your files? Now, I've said before and I'll say again, please do not host your files on your web host, because despite saying unlimited bandwidth and unlimited storage, what they mean is unlimited bandwidth and storage of regular web files for a website, not media files. Podcast files are large enough that they will notice when you put them on. They might not notice immediately, but you don't want to bet against your own success. So keep that in mind as you're making this decision. So the first thing you can look at is how much storage space do you have with a media host. And actually, let me go ahead and I'm going to fire up my website, because I have a little chart on a recent blog post that I did comparing 5 media hosts. So I'm going to fire that up right now so that I can use this as my notes. So that should work. Oh, that's right. Had the wrong URL in there. Won't work if you have the wrong URL. So these 5 that I'm comparing are Podomatic, Buzzsprout, and PodcastGarden. Now, each of these 3 free ones, I could add in archive.org if I wanted to, but I didn't, because archive.org is different. Their mission is to archive everything on the internet, and so they're not particularly fast, they're not particularly responsive. It's just they want a copy of everything. They're like the library in Alexandria in classical times. They just want a copy of everything there is. So let's put them to the side for now. And I will say that Podomatic, Buzzsprout, and PodcastGarden, which are the 3 that I'm comparing, they're each a little bit different. So first off, never, ever, ever, whether you're paying for media hosting or not, never use their feed. Just don't. Because your podcast feed is your channel frequency. It's how you connect with your audience, and you want control of that. You want absolute control of that, where you can move it from one place to another anytime you want and not have a problem. And while if you know you're going to move, there are mechanisms for it, what if you don't know that you're going to move? What if there's a billing dispute that you didn't know about until it happened? Or what if there's a problem where the company is bought by another company, or they go out of business? Then your audience just disappears, and it's hard enough to get an audience that I don't think I'd encourage you to do anything to jeopardize that. So keep that in mind as you're doing this. So with that said, all I'm thinking of these as is a place to store your file and serve your file. So you upload it, you get a direct link, and then you can deal with it there. There is a reason that I haven't included a couple of other podcast media companies, because they don't have a direct link. There's no way to get it, or there's no way that I could find to get it. Could be that they have it and I just couldn't find it. So one of those would be Podcast People, that gave me a free account for a long time, but I just couldn't find a direct link. I had to use their RSS feed, and when they canceled my account, I would have been screwed. So I'm just not going to deal with that. So it could be, as I say, that there's a way to do this. I just don't know. And I'm not mad at them. That's a feature I absolutely insist on. It's kind of like outline text in a presentation program. They should just all have it by now. So Libsyn and Blubrry, by the way, both have this, but you pay for them. So the free ones, Podomatic, Buzzsprout, and PodcastGarden, give you a direct link, and so that's good. Now, first off, the first thing that is kind of an intangible, a lot of people won't think of this, but what is their business model? The one that of these three that's my favorite, I don't know what their business model is. I've asked them about it, and I haven't heard back yet. But I'm a little concerned that they're giving away the farm, and they're not going to be able to afford to do so very long before they realize, this is costing us $10,000 a month, and we're not making any money, so that would be bad. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Podomatic and Buzzsprout, their business model is the freemium model. So they give away something for free, and then they have something better that you pay for. So that's a viable business model. It's kind of like giving away the razor, but charging for the razor blades. Although I guess probably a better analogy would be giving away a razor with kind of so-so razor blades, but selling better razor blades that fit the same razor. So, and you can decide, okay, do I put up with these that don't last very long and they pull my facial hair as I'm shaving? Do I put up with this, or do I pay a little for it? So there is a put up with this factor with all three of these. So let's talk about the three things that, well, let's start out with what the perfect media host would be, and then we'll talk about each of these three because none of them are perfect. So perfect, it would have a business model where it's clear that they are going to be around for a really long time. So in the past I would have said, oh, they're owned by Google, they're going to be around for a really long time, but Google started killing services. So while none of these are owned by Google, if there was some arrangement like that, then that would be different. If the second thing is that they do not delete old episodes ever. They just don't. That would be great. It would be great if they had unlimited bandwidth. It would be great if they had unlimited storage. It would be great if they did not rename your file. This is a personal pet peeve of mine. Along with the last thing, it would be great if they did not re-encode my file. So let's talk about each of these and talk about the limitations of each. So, Podomatic has a free plan. They give you a total of 500 megabytes, which 500 megabytes sounds like a good amount for an audio podcast. The problem is that's total. So when you get to 490 megabytes, depending on the length of your show, and you've got to delete something. So that's a bit of a problem. Next, they have a 15 gigabyte per month bandwidth cap. So that's a bit of a problem too. If you've got, let's say you're getting up close to your 500 megabytes. If you're getting up close to your 500 megabytes and you have 30 subscribers that you get that month and they all decide to download all your back catalog, which oftentimes podcast listeners will, you will hit your 15 megabytes. 30, that's not a lot. So that could be a problem. Next, do they rename your file? Yes, they absolutely do, and it's gobbledygook. It's all kinds of numbers and stuff. It doesn't help me know which episode is which. And finally, do they re-encode your file? No, they do not. So that's a plus on their side, is they don't re-encode. The minuses are you've got a finite amount of storage, a finite amount of bandwidth, and they rename your file. So Podomatic, it's okay, but it's just not my favorite. Next is Buzzsprout. Now, I like Buzzsprout for a couple of reasons. First off, they have the free plan. One thing that's a little odd is while all the other companies discuss this in terms of space, megabytes, gigabytes, the storage space that you get from Buzzsprout every month is 2 hours. So you might be thinking, oh, no problem. I will just encode at a low bitrate mono 48K and I'll be able to get tons of stuff in there. Nope, because they re-encode your file. They re-encode it at 4,800 kilobits per second. And I asked them why they did this, and they said, well, because 4,800 kilobits per second is really good. That's true, but if you start out with not a good file and you up it to 48,000 rather. I hope I didn't say 4,800 all the previous times, but I probably did. But if you re-encode it at that, that's a problem. Garbage in, garbage out. So I don't get why they do that at all. If they wanted to stick with the, maybe it just makes it easier because on the back end they're actually dealing with size and they know that at this sample rate and encoding rate it's going to be this much storage space. But I really wish that they'd call it 50 megs or whatever they call it instead of 2 hours, because that's really a little confusing. So bandwidth unlimited, yay! Do they delete your files? Yes. Boo. So after 2 months they will delete your files. So while the initial rush of the downloads will be taken up, I'm using this for Tech Help for Churches, and I've got to figure out what to do after they've been on the server for a couple of months in case someone new joins, welcome if you are new, and downloads all the episodes, because you won't get them all. Next question, do they rename your file? No, they don't, which I really appreciate. So you could see how the re-encoding, the limitation of space, and how long they keep it on a server is a bit of an issue. Finally, my favorite of these three, which I haven't really used all that much, but just in my testing out it seemed like it was really good. So it could be that in the future I'll say, oh, this is horrible. I don't know that, but it could be. So take this with a grain of salt, is PodcastGarden.com. If you go to PodcastGarden.com, they say they've got, they don't have a paid plan. It's all free. Unlimited storage, unlimited bandwidth. Free, free, free. Do they delete your files? No, they don't. Free. Do they rename your files? Oh yeah, they do. I think they're using the same kind of thing that Podomatic is, because it comes out similarly, numbers, letters, dashes, all kinds of stuff. I really don't like that. I'd love for them to change that. Do they re-encode your file? Not as far as I can tell. So they have one strike against them, that they rename the file. So here's the intangible strike against them. I don't know how they're making money. I don't know how they can keep this up. If Leo Laporte with Twit or Daniel J. Lewis with the Audacity to Podcast, or Podcast Answer Man Cliff Ravenscraft, or Dave Jackson, if a big podcaster were to use their service, how long would they be able to stay open? I don't know. And they haven't said, added services coming soon, or eventually we'll have a business model. Nothing like that. I just don't know how they can stay open. And they've only been around 4 months, 5 months, something like that. So they haven't been around for years and years and years where you go, well, they must be doing it somehow. They've got millions of podcasts. I don't know how they're doing it, but they're doing it. Nope. We don't have a track record behind them. So that's something else that I'm a little concerned about. So I guess that is what I want you to consider, is kind of deciding. I'll put a link to this comparison in the show notes if you want to go over to trinitydigitalmedia.com and take a look. For some reason, the regular index page is having a problem, so I've just got the page that has the archive for 2013 instead, so that'll get you everything that I've made this year, which is a good lot of content. But still, it's a bit of an issue, so I'm trying to figure that out. But I want you to take a look at this and make a decision. I'd still, for $5 a month, if you've got the money, Libsyn really is the best choice, because they're going to be around in the future because they've got a way to make money. They don't rename your file other than adding underscores where there are spaces. Blubrry, by the way, also adds hyphens where there are spaces, so that's permissible. I could still see what it is. They don't delete old episodes. They don't re-encode your file. They're just a great service. Same with Blubrry. Blubrry is 100 megabytes of storage, unlimited bandwidth. They don't delete old episodes. Depending on whether you need 50 megabytes per month or 100 megabytes per month, I would go with one of those two services if I could at all. The other three work, kind of. They each have their limitations, and that's something that you should keep in mind as you're doing this, because you might have to switch from one to the other, and it's not a lot of money. We're not talking about thousands of dollars a month. We're talking about $5 to $12 a month for the paid services, their introductory plans. So as soon as I have the money, I'm going to up my account with Libsyn, or maybe also open an account with Blubrry, one of those two things, and get off the free stuff, because I just don't like the limitations. And that's always the thing that you need to keep in mind, is the limitations and what the problems are and how you're paying for it. Because if you're not paying for something with money, usually you're paying for it with time or inconvenience or something like that. And I don't want you to squander your time in pursuit of saving money unless it's good stewardship. Because while you can make a lot more money in the future, you can't make any more time. You only have so much. So keep that in mind as you're making these decisions and as you're figuring out how you're going to go out and change eternity. Till next time, I'm Paul Allen Clifford with TrinityDigitalMedia.com.